Progressive talk show, don't you forget it. That's right. Politics.
Welcome to Young Turks. I am indeed your host, Cenk Huger. J.R. Jackson producing, Jesus Godoy directing. Now, in this hour, we have Sean Hannity and Sarah Palin. They're super goofballs. We're going to rip them apart. That'll be fun. And speaking of super goofballs, the Iranian government, just when you thought they couldn't get any dumber. Remember the guy who said that scantily clad women were causing earthquakes? Well, we got a guy who might trump him within the Iranian government. So, that story in a little bit in this program. But first, I want to start with disastrous news. So, here's the situation. I wake up this morning, and I'm reading my news. And I see a column by Simon Johnson, who you know I respect. He's the author of 13 Bankers, former chief economist to the International Monetary Fund. And he's got an article in his blog, Baseline Scenario, where he says, the title is Wake the President. And he explains that there is currently going on a quote, fundamental repricing of risk in financial markets around Europe. That this debacle that started in Greece, where they borrowed way too much money, and that has spread to Italy, Portugal, Spain. I mean, it was already there, but we're finding out about those as we go along. That it's getting bigger and bigger, and that it's much worse than people suspected. So it was a significantly jarring article about how bad a shape that they're in Europe, and now, of course, how that affects us as well. Then I read a second article about Warren Buffett. You know, I've been talking about this for a couple of days, about how he's pressuring Senator Ben Nelson to exempt current derivatives from the new financial reform bill. In other words, they don't want to list the current derivatives that they have. Now, Berkshire Hathaway, it turns out, has $63 billion in derivatives. That doesn't seem like a smart move, because Warren Buffett, the guy who runs Berkshire Hathaway, originally had called derivatives weapons of financial mass destruction. And he was quite right about that. The reason he doesn't want them as part of this reform bill is because it turns out, and I read this on an economic blog called The Motley Fool, that, and the guy says, look, I own, the person who wrote that says, and his name is Morgan Housel, says, look, I own Berkshire Hathaway stock, and I think Warren Buffett's a financial genius. But he's wrong on this one. And the problem is that they don't have enough collateral. So that was red flag number 2 for me. If Berkshire Hathaway does not have enough collateral for their derivatives transactions, who does? And my guess is no one. If Berkshire Hathaway doesn't have it, there's no way the major banks have enough collateral once you make them reveal what the derivative positions they actually have. Because right now they're totally secret, okay? And I want to remind you here that the derivatives market is valued at $605 trillion. The entire world GDP is only $61 trillion. That means the derivatives market is 10 times larger than the entire world GDP. That is the number that has always made me think that we were headed for a disaster. There's no way that you could gamble with 10 times the size of the world economy and not run into a gigantic problem. So that led me to a fantastic article written by Gordon Long, who's been doing this a long time. He's with IBM and many other companies, and he's an investor himself. And he was uncomfortable with this whole $605 trillion market in derivatives, and he tried to figure out, what's going on here, because that doesn't make any sense. So now the common excuses were, hey, listen, you don't understand. In fact, a lot of these derivatives are just bets against one another, so they don't really quite count because they cancel each other out. And then excuse after excuse, and based on some of those excuses, they claim that the real money at stake is only $25 trillion. And then there's another set of excuses that says, oh no, but if you take out, this and you take out that, it comes down to $3.7 trillion. That's actual money that's on the line here. First of all, I am enormously skeptical about that, as is Gordon Long. But he says, even if you take that nonsense calculation, here's what the banks don't have: $3.7 trillion. Okay, they don't have it, and so if you need to put up the collateral, they're not going to be able to put up the collateral. okay? And if you don't put up the collateral, then all of a sudden people get jittery, and then they raise the rates on you, and then you're in bigger trouble. Then you got to put up more collateral, and then the whole thing falls apart, right? So he looked into how this thing was set up in a way that you have this totally out of control system. And by the way, for the first time, I now have run into a new number that I'd never heard of before. A quadrillion, because the derivatives market keeps getting larger and larger to the point that it is approaching $1 quadrillion. Okay, can you get a sense of how big that iceberg is? Quadrillion is such a large number, we're not entirely sure. In American lexicon, it means the one above a trillion, okay? In British lexicon, let's say it has a different name. It's so large, it doesn't even have the same name in this English language when you're talking about America or Britain. That's the size of this problem, okay? So he says, all right, let's figure out how this thing got ballooned up to the point that it is. And I'm going to, it was very, of course, complicated the way he explained it. He did a great job of simplifying it, though. And you know what, I'll send out his blog on our Twitter account, twitter.com/theyoungturks, so you can read it yourself. But I'm going to try to even simplify it further, okay? Because I want you to try to get a sense of what really happened here. So he took the case of the banks that were borrowing the money, for example, the Greek banks that were borrowing it, that are now unraveling. And here's how the scam worked. So what the Greek government wanted to do was they wanted to deliver, for example, on their political promises, right? So they wanted to build things, hospitals, bridges, etc., which are great, but then they also, of course, built some things they didn't need to build, but that's because there were private companies who got those contracts, who were motivated to get that money, etc. But so they, for all of those reasons, they were motivated to borrow more money than they actually had. But how did they do that? Well, they said, look, I've got a steady revenue stream here from the Greek taxpayers, as an example, right? So the taxpayers keep giving me this money, and I'm going to borrow off of that. So if they had, let's, again, oversimplifying here, if they had $1, they were allowed to borrow $5 because the banks who were giving it to them would say, all right, well, look, if I get your tax revenue stream for X period of years, 20, 30 years, that's eventually going to equal $5. So, all right, here, I'll give you $5. Now, I think to myself, all right, look, if I'm the Greek government, it's not smart, or by the way, the Italian government, Portuguese government, etc. It's not smart, but I see why they did that, right? But if I'm the banker, why did I lend him this money, which I'm not entirely sure he's going to be able to pay back, right? Well, the reason is, so Greece is using the taxpayer money, and by the way, this applies to almost all the governments. They're using the taxpayer money as collateral to get the bigger loans, right? The banks that are giving them that loans then turn around, and this is the critical part. They take that $5 that they lent them, and they leverage it 10 times because they say, hey, that money's already in my pocket. Accounting-wise, it's not actually in their pocket, but accounting-wise, they say, well, that's an asset of mine, right? So now I could borrow 10 times that amount of asset and make my derivatives bets, et cetera, so they can make commissions and transactions off of all of those events. So then all of a sudden you're up to $50 that's at stake, right? But the original asset was only worth $1. Okay, so now take that and multiply it by so much more. It's not just so much more money, but so much more leverage, because people kept doing this over and over. They would flip it. They'd say, all right, well, now I have the $50, and I'm going to use that as leverage to get $500. And so then all of a sudden, you had a $605 trillion derivatives market. And that's how it got built up. Now, here are the problems with that. And by the way, what was the bank's motivation? Because if you keep borrowing that kind of money and pretending that you have that collateral which you don't actually have, eventually it's going to go bust on you, right? Everybody knows that. Well, their motivation is to make money in the short run because their executives don't own the banks. So now we've gone over this many times, but I'll give you a specific number also from today's research. In last year alone, the top 5 banks in America, off of the derivatives transactions, made $28 billion. And generally speaking, I know from other articles I've read that they take about 40 to 50% of that home in salary. So if, for example, Goldman Sachs just their last bonus and salary cycle, they took 43%, right? So they'll take that $28 billion and go, well, you know what? Since I made $28 billion for the bank, why don't you let me take home, let's say, about, given those numbers, about $12 billion of it. So they take the $12 billion home, a very few amount of people that run those banks, and it's already in their pocket, okay? And then they come around, and at some point, is it going to be worth the risk that they took and the leverage that they got themselves into? Of course not. But when it collapses, it's not their problem. Now, the other thing that they do is they got to unload this risk because they don't want it to blow up on their account. They want to pretend that everything was hunky-dory and then, oh, well, look at that problem the other guy had, right? So where do they unload it? In these things they've created called clearinghouses. I'm not entirely sure whose money is at stake there, right? And the United States government, for example, the Greek government, and now ultimately the Fed. Another article I read today, and this goes along with many things I've read earlier and things we've discussed on the show, the Fed used to have about $1 trillion in assets that they would cycle, okay? Now they have $2.15 trillion. They more than doubled it. Why? They're buying the toxic assets. So all that junk that was created that doesn't actually have that value is being unloaded away from the bank so it doesn't blow up on them and onto places like the Fed. And when it blows up on the Fed, guess who's going to get stuck with the bill? Ding, 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 we have a winner. That's right, you. And then they'll turn around and go, oh, well, come on. Nobody could have seen this coming. The regulators couldn't see it coming. The bankers couldn't see it. It was the perfect storm. It was the perfect storm. All right, look, the problem is when the Fed runs out of money, and if they need, and the banks will, it doesn't, and by the way, they think they're cute and they're clever, but it doesn't matter. There's still so much of this stuff inside the banks that they're all going to implode anyway, okay? It's that they're not going to be effectively able to unload all of it on the Fed or the United States taxpayers. So they're going to drag everyone down with them. And the next time we don't have the money for a bailout. We just don't have it. That's why I'm worried that the iceberg is much closer than we suspect. And as Long explained, he said one of the things that is propping this up is low interest rates. The interest rates are so low that they could continue to borrow more and more and more money to keep reinflating that bubble. And I think that's exactly what we're in the process of now, in the middle of. We're sitting on top of another precarious bubble. So I think the last financial collapse, unfortunately, and I hate to tell you this, was not the end. It was the beginning. So now we've temporarily reinflated a little bit, but the bankers are mad because you guys aren't buying enough. They say, consumer demand is not high enough. And so after I read all this, and I already had my conclusions, what's the next story I read? Pops up on the newswire. The Fed has decided to keep interest rates between 0 and 0.25% indefinitely. Now they will, theoretically, at some point raise those rates, but not in the foreseeable future as far as this quarter or the next quarter is concerned. So why are they doing that? It's because of what Long just explained. If they raise the interest rates, it's going to trigger off a cycle where we're going to find out the banks actually don't have any collateral, they don't have, this leverage was out of control, and they don't have the money, Lebowski, to justify these bets. And then comes the great unraveling, and unfortunately I think the great cratering, where everything caves in on itself. So that's why, I've always had this, imagery in my head of we're on board the Titanic and I could see the iceberg and say, I was telling you guys it's about 1 to 3 years away and I'm a little worried. Well, after reading all of this stuff today, I feel like the fog kind of lifted and it was no longer that far away. The iceberg was staring me straight in the face. I'm with what's happening in Europe and the unraveling there, I'm afraid this economic calamity might be around the corner. Now, it's possible that I am wrong about all this, and Simon Johnson is wrong, and Long is wrong, and Stiglitz is wrong, and all these people are wrong. And by the way, I'm the most dire on it. You should know that, okay? some people are more optimistic than I am. I quote Simon Johnson all the time, but he thinks there's still enough time to turn around and to influence the government and get on the right path. I don't believe that's the case, and I hate to say that. I always tell you, I'm long-term optimistic. I think America's a great country, and we'll be able to recover after we hit the iceberg. But I don't think there's enough time to turn around before we hit it. And so, look, I'll give you one more thing to give you a little bit of panic. I hate to do it, but I'm trying to tell you what I think is the reality, and I keep telling you all along that I hope I'm wrong. People are now starting to talk about splitting up their money in different accounts so they're all protected up to $250,000. Okay? You understand what that means? They're worried about the FDIC not covering things above $250,000. That the collapse would be so deep that they say, all right, we're just cutting it off, and anything above that, sad day, we don't have the money. So they're thinking about splitting up the accounts, different accounts, so there's $250,000 in each one of them so they could protect more money. The bankers are taking their salaries now in record percentages in cash. They're not. Obama wants to have them taken in stock options. They're not taking it in stock options because they're looking for the lifeboats. They're taking it in cash. I hope I'm wrong, but if I'm not, we're going to see an economic disaster like we've never seen before. All right, everybody pray against me. Okay, Young Turks.
I don't know which.
All right, back on the Young Turks. A couple of quick notes on the economy again, and then I'm going to go to a topic that might at some point be related. I hope it's not. I'll explain that in a second. First, the title of that Fed article amused me. Fed keeps rates at record lows, upbeat on the economy. All right. I do not share their upbeatness. Felix Salmon is a guy who's been covering these business affairs for Reuters for a long time, and he's very respected in the field. He recently said in an interview with Huffington Post, the big banks have enough lobbying power to continue taking big risks, that he does not see their lobbying power being overcome by any reform effort, and that they will continue as they are. Disaster. Okay, and a perfect example of that is Ben Nelson. So we've been telling you over the last 2 days about how Ben Nelson has joined the Republicans in filibustering 3 different times financial reform. Why? Because he wanted current derivatives exempted from the reform package. Why? Because Warren Buffett is from Nebraska and Berkshire Hathaway has $63 billion in derivatives, which they don't have enough collateral for. So, that's a great shame on Warren Buffett that he's involved in this. And as far as Nelson's concerned, well, we find out today that it's not just that he's interested in protecting somebody from his home state or someone that might give him campaign funds. Turns out, according to his latest financial disclosure statement, Mr. Nelson owns anywhere between $1 to $6 million in Berkshire Hathaway stock. Gee, I wonder why he's concerned about what might happen to Berkshire Hathaway stock. But I'm sure it's in a blind trust. In case you couldn't tell, it's not. He knows exactly where it is, and that's why part of the reason he's going to do the bidding of this corporation that tells him to do to make sure that they block that provision in the reform bill. So now, luckily, the Democrats got past that filibuster, but Ben Nelson is one of the country's worst politicians. He is one of the biggest corporatists, and he will sell out and grab the money in every imaginable way. And he has absolutely no shame about it. So will he continue to throw up roadblocks as we go along in reform? You can bet on it, because he has. He's got all his money to make sure there isn't real financial reform. You think he's not concerned about his $1 to $6 million? Yeah, likely. All right, now a possibly related story. I hope it's not related. There was an excellent report in Reuters about the militia movement. First of all, there are now 200 armed militias in the United States. That number has quadrupled since 2008, since Obama's election. And now there are 6,000 members and many other adherents that aren't necessarily signed up members that are on the rolls. So what happened in these short amount of time that led to a quadrupling of the militia movement in the United States of America? Well, the Reuters lists a number of reasons that the militia members themselves give. One is the 9/11 attacks, which revived the notion that citizens should defend the United States against threats. Did 9/11 happen in 2008? Oh, no, right, that happened in 2001. What the hell would that have to do with quadrupling after '08? Point number two, the 2001 Patriot Act. The 2001 Patriot Act. I don't remember these militias going nuts during Bush's administration. No, they were quiet as a church mouse. Number three, anger at government failure to stop mass illegal immigration from Latin America. Again, even if you take that as their real concern, great, that was the same exact situation under Bush, which they claimed to be so angry about back then, but they weren't grabbing their guns. Final two reasons, the recent recession, the worst since the 1930s, that's fair, and that does get a lot of people upset, especially if they lose their jobs, etc. And yeah, you know, it might be Bush's fault in the first place, he's the one that started it. They either don't remember that or don't care. The bottom line is they're mad, right? And then, let's look at the last reason. The election in 2008 of President Barack Obama. Yeah, that might have something to do with it. Yep. And then, by the way, reason number 6 is healthcare reform. They claim that they're constitutionalists and they're here to protect the country against good healthcare treatment. What does that have to do with anything with militias? It has absolutely nothing to do with it. It's a joke. Oh no, the government's infringing upon our rights like they did when they tried to take away our automatic weapons. Treating your kid for cancer is the same as taking away your automatic weapons? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. They just wanted to grab the weapons. To give you a sense of what they're doing here, the main guy they interviewed was a person from Southeast Michigan Volunteer Militia, okay? And now, to be fair to them, understand that militia, for example, got contacted by the Hutari, who were trying to kill the cops, and they got arrested. And they did not help the Hutari, and they called the cops and said, no, these guys are crazy, okay? And when you read the article, look, of course they sound like perfectly normal Americans. They go to barbecues. Now, they shoot things at barbecues, but still, that's fine. That's pretty American anyway. And one of the wives of one of the leaders is Greek, and she brings baklava, and they all want the baklava. It's cute. It's like a cute little scene, and the guy works for UPS, and everything's fine until you read this stuff, right? First, he says that he's really worried because at any moment, they're on hair trigger. He literally carries around what he calls a football with him. That if something goes wrong, every militia member knows where to go, where to get their guns, where to meet up, and how to take action. So what would go wrong? What could possibly happen? He says, well, if the world comes crashing down, or one day, quote, the communist Chinese or the Venezuelans or whoever come marching across the border, we're under imminent attack by the Venezuelans? I mean, that's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I mean, you're just looking for any kind of reason to make up in your head. You're playing Dungeons and Dragons inside your own head. Oh, here comes the communist Chinese and the Venezuelans. Where? Where are they coming from? And he's on hair trigger for this. Get a load of what they have their training. They have learned how to make a bow from sapling and fashioning rock into a razor-sharp knife. He says, quote, I carry as part of my battle gear a rifle and 290 rounds of ammo. I feel very good about that. If I can use a knife and fashion a bow, I use that to feed my family. I can save the ammo for dropping the bad guys. Hoo-ah! By the way, of course, that gentleman has never served in the military. So instead, he's been out in the woods, like getting ready for the Venezuelans. Now, that's that particular militia. And then there are the Oath Keepers, which are a little bit more troublesome, if you ask me. A lot of them are part of the military, and they say that they are ready to ignore orders given by the military and do what they think is right if they feel that they have an unconstitutional order given to them. So what are the scenarios that they envision for them grabbing their weapons and going to their different hideout in the woods? They say that they are ready to ignore any order to, quote, blockade American cities, thus turning them into giant concentration camps, and any order to support the use of any foreign troops on U.S. soil against the American people. Any chance that we're going to have Iranian soldiers brought in by our government? Who? South African soldiers? I don't know. Thai soldiers? Okay, now, everybody, round them up. Blockades, concentration camps. The Thai are here, and so are the Bulgarians. Foreign troops on U.S. soil. I mean, they're in fantasy land. The problem is they got 290 rounds of ammo apiece. And as the experts interviewed by Reuters explained, hey, listen, the problem isn't that they're all 6,000 members of these militias, et cetera, are going to go literally ballistic and attack at the drop of a hat. The problem is the lone wolves, that they rile certain people up, and then that guy goes and acts on his own. For example, Tim McVeigh was part of a militia, and then he got all riled up, and then he dropped out of the militia, and the next time anybody heard from him, he killed 168 people by bombing a federal building. And now we have the Hutari, who actually acted in unison and were going to kill the cops, and they got arrested. We got the guy who was not part of a militia movement, but was so anti-government he ran his plane into an IRS building, and it builds and it builds. And does it have something to do with the fact that we have a Democratic president? Of course it does. Remember how the militia went nuts when Clinton was president. Does it have something to do with the conservative talk show hosts riling him up, talking about the Obama regime, as Rush Limbaugh calls it? He never called it the Bush regime. And do they stoke those fires? Of course they stoke those fires. And then they'll turn around and say, what? What are you talking about? Oh, all those people acted by themselves and we had nothing to do with it. And this militia movement is probably about health care or 9/11. It's absolutely unbelievable. All right, so I'm worried, man, because if you take, I mean, if I'm right, and for the millionth time in a row, I hope I'm wrong, and we have an economic disaster that happens, then you have these guys that are on hair trigger alert for Venezuelans, and then we're in a terrible economic situation. I don't know how that powder keg explodes, but I'm worried about it. I'm significantly worried about it. But it's a good report from Reuters that brings it to light. Okay, now, speaking of the guys who put them on that hair trigger alert, let's go to Hannity and Palin. Palin is going to be on Hannity's program, and they're going to be just outraged at all the different insults that Sarah Palin has had to endure. Although I did enjoy part of this clip where Hannity keeps listing all of the things said about Palin, and Palin has to just sit there with an awkward smile on her face. Yeah, they called me all those things. So let's go to clip number 7.
Governor, you have been attacked for the clothes you wear. Your family has been attacked. Your intelligence has been questioned. Your governance has been questioned. Your motivations have been questioned. But I'll be honest, I don't think things have gotten this bad in terms of the attacks on you. And this is just the last week. I've asked you about different instances in the past. The president recently took a shot at you about the arms control issue. You have Joe Klein, prominent writer, prominent news magazine, actually saying that you were rubbing right up to being close to seditious from Time magazine, Joe Klein. You have Representative Grayson. Governor Palin is trying to make fascism fashionable. And James Carville, Palin is a reptile, but only he would know. Look, I know you're used to the attacks. Seditious? That is a serious charge. And I wanted to give you an opportunity. Grayson, fascism, fashionable. These attacks now are crossing a line in my mind, and I wanted to get your reaction.
Yeah, what a piece of work that Mr. Klein is for the piece that he wrote. That is something else. You know, you would hope that the powers that be at a quote-unquote reputable organization like Time magazine, that they would hold their employee, and I assume that Mr. Klein gets paid for the columns that he writes, that they would hold their employee accountable and they would actually ask him, what is it that I or others in the conservative movement have said that would rise to the level of this inciting of violence and revolt and all these other things that evidently he claims. For them to allow things like that to be printed just really discredits Time magazine and other organizations that would allow that kind of rhetoric and false reporting, misreporting, their lies.
I don't know what would make them think that we were urging people to be violent. Maybe it was my Facebook posting where I told people to reload after health care. Maybe it was my website that had Democratic districts with a rifle scope on it. Maybe it was my friend Michelle Bachmann that I have done a couple of appearances with, saying that every once in a while we need a revolution in this country, as Thomas Jefferson said, and telling her followers to grab their guns. Maybe it was all that. Maybe it was Glenn Beck saying in front of a crowd in Texas that, hey, maybe Texas should secede. Does that sound seditious? Maybe it was all of their anti-government talk. The government is the enemy. The government is the worst. You should fear the government. The government is coming for you. Maybe it was that. But, you put all that aside, and I don't know if any of that amounts to being seditious. I think that's a heavy charge, and I probably wouldn't go there, okay? But Fox News is complaining? Fox News, the guys who said during the Bush administration over and over again, oh, they don't support our government, they don't support the president, they don't support the troops, these people are un-American. And now they're crying over the word seditious? And how about fascism? They said, can you believe they alluded that you might be bordering on fascist? How about Glenn Beck, who calls the president fascist every single day on your network? How about that? Nah, Hannity conveniently leaves that aside and says, I think they're crossing a line. Oh, do you? Okay. And then finally, I love Sarah Palin being outraged that how could they charge me with all these things? When she says in nearly every speech, Obama, who pals around with terrorists. And Obama, who she said was, quote, un-American. But how dare they accuse her of being un-American or encouraging violence? No, only she's allowed to do that. Only Fox News is allowed to do that. You guys better behave. It makes no sense, but it doesn't have to. It's Fox News. Now, when we come back, I got one more Palin and Hannity for you guys. And then, and then the Iran story is out of control. All right, that when we return. Young Turks. Back on the Young Turks. Look, I know you want more Hannity and Palin nonsense. I know it. You know it. The American people know it. So I'm going to give it to you. In the last part of their absurd interview, Hannity's going to ask Palin more brilliant, piercing questions. He's really holding her feet to the fire. Let's check it out.
We have this new debt panel which will offer their recommendations after the coming election, which I find the timing a little bit dubious. But he's saying that the president agrees that everything is on the table, and that includes tax increases, and that includes even a consumption tax or a value-added tax. What do you think that would do to the economy, and is the president looking for cover to break one of the prime promises he made during the campaign?
Yes, the president is looking for cover to allow him to break yet another campaign promise that he would not increase taxes, because so often a commission like this is formed just for that purpose, is to create cover, so that in this case the president could say, well, they told me to do it, we have to do it, or the economy will fail, we will be in crisis. I'm sick and tired of hearing about Obama and the White House coming out with yet another crisis that has to be fixed by government sticking it to the people and taking more of what we earn and produce, instead of allowing our small businesses especially to keep more of what we earn and produce and then reinvest according to our own priorities so that we can grow and thrive and hire more people. That's how we create jobs. That's how the economy will get roaring back to life. But see, too many in the White House, including our own president, I don't know when they have run a business. I don't know when they have been a CEO of anything where they've had to look out for the bottom line and they've had to make payroll and live within their own means with the budget. You know, they're from government. They're community organizers. They've been spending other people's money for so long that I think a lot of the free enterprise principles that so many of us believe in, it's all foreign to them.
Right. When did you run a business? Oh, right. You never ran a business, Sarah Palin. So what are you talking about? When were you a CEO? All you did was you were mayor and then you were governor. And before that, you were a beauty pageant winner or something, and I think a sports reporter. When did you run a business? And then what's greatly ironic about this, I don't know if you know this, Sarah Palin's the biggest socialist in the country. When she was governor of Alaska, the reason that she was so popular, at one point she had an 80% popularity rating, is because she took money from the oil companies that were drilling in Alaska and redistributed it to the Alaskan citizens. Literally. And then she's talking about, oh no, what you got to do is you got to cut the taxes for those employers and those large corporations. I know. Well, you did the exact opposite. That's why you were popular. It's not because she was really conservative, it's because she was socialist. That's why she got that popularity. So now she says, oh, they're inventing yet another crisis. No, that last crisis was not invented it was created by 8 years of Republican rule, in case you forgot. And it would be convenient, of course, for you to forget it. And now they're trying to say that Obama's going to raise taxes when, in fact, he's cut taxes for over 95% of people. I think that's, if you ask me, too risky. I wouldn't do that. I would raise taxes. But Obama is not me, and we know that for sure. Okay. The one thing Hannity's right about is the timing. Yeah, of course, they're going to do the results after the elections because they don't want to do them before the elections and say, oh, by the way, we're going to do all these tough things. But you know what the real point of that panel is, by the way? The one they are now pretending that they're against? That panel is going to come out and say, oh, we need to reduce the deficit. How are we going to do it? Will they raise some taxes? My guess is yes. It's nearly impossible to balance the budget without doing so, right? But they'll say, oh, but you know what? We got to cut your Social Security and Medicare. The real problem is we borrowed all that money from Social Security and Medicare and we can't pay it back. So even though you paid into it all these years, sad day for you, we're going to take your money. Because in the end, it always comes back to taking your money and redistributing it to the top, not to the bottom. Fox News is worried that poor people in this country and middle-class people in this country are getting too much from the government. You think that's what's happening? Not many Americans think that. All right, now I have some amazing stats on that, but I don't know if I'm going to get to it in today's show. All right, I got to go to another crazy Republican for you guys. It's Duncan Hunter Jr. He is worried about what's happening in Arizona. He's worried about illegal immigration. He's at an event here called Ramona Teed, Taxed Enough Already, convention, party, get-together, whatever it might be. And they're all riled up about the illegals. And he's going to have a very curious thing to say about Mexican immigrants in this country, including the legal ones. So let's check out clip number 4.
Yes, Congressman, would you support deportation of natural-born American citizens that are the children of illegal aliens?
Yes. But I support the deportation of natural-born American citizens that are the kids of illegal aliens.
Yes.
I would have to, yes. I would have to. And let me tell you why. You know, it's a complex issue, and it's, you know, you can look and say you're a mean guy. You know, that's a mean thing to do. That's not a humanitarian thing to do. We simply cannot afford what we're doing right now. We just can't afford it. California's going under. How much in debt are we? $20 billion? $30 billion? At least Jay said 10. It's between 10 and $20 billion in this state that we spend on illegal immigration. Like he said, it's health services, that's education, and jails. We just can't afford it anymore. That's it. And we're not being mean. We're just saying it takes more than walking across the border to become an American citizen. It's what's in our souls, not just walking across the border that's laid in the ground somewhere.
Well, that last statement was incredibly ironic, but let me save that to the end. So let me understand this right. All those militias are worried about rounding up United States citizens, and the guys who are actually in favor of rounding up U.S. citizens are the Republicans and the conservatives. He just said right there, natural-born citizen. Who cares? Well, I thought you cared about the Constitution. That's what's in the Constitution. Remember, again, the conservatives are like, oh, the Constitution! Unless we don't like it, and of course it doesn't apply to Mexicans. That'll be ridiculous. So let's round up natural-born citizens and pretend they're not citizens anymore. And what's his excuse? Well, we don't have the money anymore. Okay, if we don't have the money, how about we send your ass out of the country? Why? I mean, they're a citizen just as much as you're a citizen. Why do you get to pick them out and send, quote-unquote, send them back? Why don't we send your ass back to wherever the hell he came from? Right? You said we don't have money. Hey, I'm sorry, man. I rounded you up. I rounded you up and I sent you. Sorry, okay? I just didn't have the money. What could I do? Oh, you don't like that, but you're willing to do it to other American citizens because they're from a certain place. That's interesting. And then the great irony of his last statement. Being an American is about what's in your soul. Immigrants come to this country because they believe in America, and they have hope, and they believe in the opportunity. That's what's in their soul. What's in your dark soul? You were born in a piece of land, and so you think, oh, I'm an American because I was born here. By the way, so were they. That was the question, if they were born here, right? But there's nothing in your soul that it leads me to believe that you understand what America is about at all. You think America is about discriminating people against people based on where they're from, then you don't understand what America is about at all. Please, spare me your talk about souls. These people, all right, I'm going to leave it right there. Before I get more riled up. Okay. One last thing. They don't think you're their equal. That's the bottom line. They think white people born here, whose parents were born here, wherever here might be, whether it's Texas, South Carolina, California, it doesn't really matter. They count. They're real Americans. If you're from another country, and it doesn't matter if you were born here, it doesn't matter if you're a citizen, they never think you belong. They don't think you're real Americans. That's what pisses me off the most. All right, so now let's go to other governments' goofiness. And when you talk about ridiculous governments, obviously you come to Iran. Now, recently we had the Hoja, the cleric, top cleric in Tehran, saying, we're getting earthquakes because women are dressing too scantily now. Really? That's your biggest problem in Iran? Oh, now sometimes you can see some of their hair. Wow, yeah, that's what must have caused the earthquake. And now, of course, famously, we did Boobquake over here. We had the founder on the show, and it turns out there was no earthquakes in Iran, even though many people across the world showed their cleavage. So now, the Hoja is not alone. We've got Tehran's police chief, Brigadier Hussein Sajadinia, saying it's not just the problem of women that are showing too much skin. It's the women with tans. Not kidding. He says, the public expects us to act firmly and swiftly if we see any social misbehavior by women and men who defy our Islamic values. I didn't know tanning was against Islam. I had no idea. I never read that in the Quran. And I had read large chunks of the Quran, studied it. And I never said, as far as I can see, maybe you can point it out to me, Allah says you shall not tan. When did that happen? We're not going to tolerate this situation. We will first warn those found in this manner, and then arrest them, and then imprison them. I like that. Hey, you got a tan. I'm warning you. Damn it, you still have the tan. Now I'm going to arrest you. Damn it, you still have the tan. All right, go ahead and imprison her. Or are you going to come back the next day and check on her? Are you going to keep on checking on her? And are you kidding me? Women who are tanned, they're Persian. Okay, I know, I'm from the area. They used to say that I had a perpetual tan. We look like this naturally. What do you want Persian women to get rid of their tan? And what does that have to do with Islam? No, the women, they look a little too hot with the tan. You know, I know they're covered up, but you see their face and it looks so good, all tan and stuff. I have to keep coming back and checking to make sure they have been properly warned. Those naughty, naughty girls with their naughty tans. I mean, this guy is head of the police in Tehran, Iran, in their capital. And he's looking out for the major problem of not robbery, not murder, not rape, not muggies, not any of that stuff. Women who are too tanned. Just when you thought the Iranian government couldn't get any dumber. Okay, well, you were wrong. They went and trumped you. But here's another quote from Sajadinia, by the way. In some areas of North Tehran, we can see many sun-tanned women and young girls who look like walking mannequins. I'm telling you, man, he's like, oh, they look too good. They look like walking mannequins. In North Tehran, all those young girls and the women with their tans. They have been bad girls. I think it's time to punish them. These guys are so pent up, man. They're about to blow. They're like, oh, look at this scantily clad woman causing earthquake. At least in me. And now they got the tan. How did they expect me to resist? I will have to warn you and then imprison you. Iran. It's the 21st century. Welcome. Hello. Okay. I'm out of time. What do I have time for? I got time for... Well, I can't do these justice in the minute that I have left. But I will tell you that 92% of Americans say they are unhappy with the economy. You don't say. And the people in Washington and New York can't figure out why. Because you're not in that 92%. Here, I'll give you one quick number on this, and then we'll do it on another day. 49% of Americans, that's half the country, are worried that they're either going to lose their job or get a significant salary cut in the next year. That's half the country scared to death that their jobs are on the line and they're not going to be able to feed their families. And the politicians wonder, gee, golly gee willikers, well, why are people concerned in the country? Everybody among my friends on Wall Street and Fox News tell me everything's dandy. Go out in real America, see how people are doing. Young Turks.